About 2 months ago, I made a video about work that I was doing on an old song, and in response to that video, I got one of my favorite comments that I've ever received on this channel. In the comment, Jester Jacob WS5IX, WS6, I don't know, says, "You make music weird. How do you work on a song from years ago? Every time I go back to an old idea, it changes into a completely different thing, and it definitely doesn't have the same name." In the video to which that comment relates, I was working on a song called Pretty Mess that had been floating around and had had that name since 2011. And I said something about that in the video, which naturally prompted this comment. And I think it's a really reasonable comment because I spend a lot of time working on old songs. Why do I do that? What value does it add to my life and specifically my creative life? And is it actually a creative act or more like rehashing or reviving or going through the motions? To answer these questions, I think it would help for me to explain what I mean when I say that I'm working on an old song, and the easiest way to explain almost anything is with an example. So let's focus on the songs from my upcoming EP. The EP has 5 songs, and every one of them is an old song that I've been working on since the fall of 2008. And what I mean by that is that all 5 of those songs are traceable back to songs that I started writing at that time. Every one of them shares at least a little bit of DNA with a specific song from that era, or to be more accurate in the case of these 5 songs, with 5 specific songs that I completed at that time. But that doesn't make sense. If I completed the 5 songs in 2008, how could I still be working on them in 2024? The answer is in the cliche that art is never finished, only abandoned. And that's exactly what happened in this case. Of the 5 songs that I finished writing at the end of 2008, only 3 of them were ever heard by another person. And if I'm being totally honest, I really only respected one of them, because for the other 4 songs, the luster faded really quickly. I felt like I could do better as a writer, and I felt like I could no longer identify with some of those songs, so I left them behind. But not forever. And that's in part because those 2 factors, my skill as a writer and my identity as a writer-performer, continued to change over time. And as I got older, and really after I became a father, it became much more important for me to honor or at least respect the things that I had written when I was younger. I'm sad to say that up to that point, I really hadn't respected most of the things that I had written, and as a result, myself as a writer. I really became aware of this in the summer of 2019, and with all this stuff swirling around in my head, I started to systematically go back and revisit some of my oldest songs, hoping to hear them with fresh perspective, but also maybe to revisit them with a fresh set of skills. And something miraculous happened. I was able to see myself in these old songs, for better and for worse. I mean, I was not a perfect person and certainly not a perfect writer, but with a more charitable outlook on myself, I was able to see some of the good things in these old works, things that I had never really noticed before, but that unsurprisingly overlap with the things that made me excited about those ideas in the first place. And then with some extra skill, I was able to imagine, how could I build a new version of this old song on top of the things about the old song that were actually good? That thinking led me into a process that wasn't really revising an old song, and it wasn't really writing a new song. It was somewhere in between, sort of encouraging the song to grow or evolve and using my wisdom to help explain where it might go. And that is the exact perspective and process that I ended up applying to these 5 songs. Now, I didn't get to them and working on them in this way until December of 2021, and I remember it specifically because it started right before my second was born. By the end of that month, I had written new or evolved versions of each of those 5 songs. Some were very similar to their original versions. But most had changed pretty dramatically. Yet even in those extreme cases, there was a thread that tied these new songs back to the original versions. Sometimes the thread was melodic, as in the case of Sunday Writes, "I wake up with half a fifth of whiskey," a song that grew out of the original melody of a song called Half Empty. "Woke up today in the pouring rain." And other songs were totally different from a musical perspective, but I guess shared a mood with the original piece, and in many cases would borrow or at least start with lyrics that had been in the original versions. "There's a lady in red She offers me all, carry into dreams when I leave the bar. And from the outside, the process of writing those songs probably looks just like writing a brand new song. But I could see those threads, and they helped give me a sense of where I wanted to go and of when I thought a song was done. And honestly, I'm glad to have had that vague guidance because it took a long time for me to actually finish most of these songs. Sometime in January 2022, my writing on these songs slowed as my focus drifted to other things and as I hit some frustrations or roadblocks in the writing process. But I kept hacking away at them periodically over the next 2 years. And then things started to come together. There were a few aha moments along the way, but the most significant relates to the very first track on the EP, a song that had been especially frustrating and as a result is kind of an exemplar of how real this rewriting process can be. Back in 2008, the song was called Sometimes It Ain't That Lonely. Sometimes it ain't that lonely, standing out in the rain. It was upbeat and kind of country influenced, which seemed like a nice bed on which I could complain about a girl not liking me. I guess with a smile and a wink, but that was never clear. When I sat down to rewrite that song, I had a really hard time connecting with those original lyrics because the feelings in them were so shallow. The jokes weren't that funny, and they did a pretty bad job of covering up the sadness I was feeling, but the sadness was a very teenage sadness. It didn't really have a lot of depth whatsoever, especially compared to some of the real sadness that I had experienced as an adult. So instead of feeling beholden to that original song, I just pulled out some of the parts that I liked. I took those ingredients and threw them into a bowl and started mixing them with other experiences and ideas. And I got results, but I wasn't ever really that happy with them. So I just told myself that the song wasn't done yet, and I kept writing. And more importantly, I kept living. I kept having real life experiences and reflecting on those and beginning to integrate some of those emotions into the things that I was working on, including a bunch of song ideas that will never see the light of day, that I think were really just practice for saying some of the things I ended up saying in Sometimes. It's funny, over time it ended up circling back to something like the original subject matter. Girl, no love me. Except it was much more serious, and there was a depth of feeling there because I'm no longer singing about a college crush. And all the time that I spent thinking about those concepts, trying to work them into other songs, and then meditating on the basic lyrical conceit of the song Sometimes, all that collided one day as I drove home from dropping off one of my kids at school. An image appeared in my mind, an image that I knew I could build a verse around. It became the first verse of the final song. Sometimes I stare at the ring we spent 6 weeks picking. And the muses must have been smiling upon me because the second verse came only a few minutes later. I made some minor changes to the existing parameters of the song in order to accommodate this new lyric, and then it was done. And if you heard it side by side with Sometimes It Ain't That Lonely standing out in the rain from 2008, you would not think they were the same song. But at their core, they are. One is just an older and wiser and decidedly more serious version. I also think it's a lot better, but I do really think that they are at the core the same song. And that's because I am at the core the same writer. Yes, I've had a lot more life experiences and I have a lot more skills as a songwriter, but the things that I care about, the things that move me, the things that I want to sing about and to manifest in music are more or less the same. The results are informed by everything that's happened in the ensuing 16 years, but I'm still the same guy, and it's still the same song. And yeah, if you step back and think, wow, he spent 16 years completing a song that's 2.5 minutes long, that might seem a little bizarre. But to me, it's not that different from keeping a stockpile of licks that you wrote and liked and recorded but never had a home, and periodically turning to those old ideas either as inspiration or sometimes to be plugged into a new song. It's like that, except instead of looking for riffs, I'm looking for, well, really as much as I can get. I mean, I will live with something like a melody fragment or a lyrical concept or a title, but if I can preserve more of the original version through all those iterations, that feels good, and it's an extra challenge. Sometimes I like challenges. This entire project has been a challenge, and it has been a long one, so I'm extraordinarily relieved to be done with it, and I'm proud of what I've written. And if I could go back in time and play the results for me in 2008, I think that version of me, who was 180 pounds and had no wrinkles and totally brown hair, and who who knew jack shit about relationships, I think he probably would like him too. I guess that's all I have to say about that. If you continue to think that the process is weird, please tell me that in the comments. If you can relate to what I'm talking about, tell me that in the comments. But mostly, I want to say thank you for making it this far. I appreciate you and your time, and I hope you're doing well. Take care of yourselves and be on the lookout next week. This EP is going to be dropping on or about November 22nd. That's a Friday. It's a good one. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Look for it here or on Bandcamp or wherever you like to look for music. And I might even be making and selling some physical versions of it, which would be a first for me. So stay tuned for more details about that. But until then, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you around. I feel like I can't leave you hanging like that. I mean, I gave you little tastings of these songs throughout the video, but I gotta give you something more. So here's the full version of the song that received the most attention in this video. It's the first song on the EP. It's called Sometimes. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching. Sometimes I stare at the ring we spent 6 weeks picking. A dim glow from an old world mine. It sits on the bathroom sink while we're sleeping. How can your dream be the same as mine? Sometimes I see you smile like in picture, but when I look in it closer, it's gone. I don't wanna know what spark has those feelings flickering on, flickering on. How much can I take? 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 Can I take? How much can I take? How much can I